your note packets. This portion, along with this portion, this is your ticket if you'd like to get into the 30-minute session, is just showing that all of this work is filled out. So whatever I'm writing down, you should be writing down as well, okay? And any questions as I'm talking, if you have a question, let's say here, you're like, I really don't understand how you wrote this. Well, then, you can just make a little question and be like, hey, ask, Joy about this. Or if I don't really understand or something like that, make a thing, and then just kind of make it obvious or, say, oh, I need some help here. And then as you're looking through your notes when we get into class, you can just flip and be like, oh, there's that thing that says help. I wasn't understanding this. Hey, can you please clarify that? You can ask myself or Mr. Toth. So make little notes like this as you're watching the videos. Okay, these are our first problems. So the first problem we're going to look at is 16 over 80, and we're going to simplify that. That means we are going to take out the common factors. So first off, we could list out the common factors of 16 and 80 first. Or you can just start factoring away. Looking at these two, canceling out the common factors. Looking at both of these, I know that they're even, right? So I can easily just take out 2 and 2 and then get the numbers smaller. And then sometimes when the numbers are smaller, they're a little bit easier to work with. 16 is already small, but 80 is kind of big. There's a lot of stuff going on with 80. But just for practice, let's go ahead and just write out the factors of 16 and 80 just this time. So 16, the factors of 16 are 1 times 16. It's divisible by 2, so it's going to be 2 and 8. It's not divisible by 3 because 1 plus 6 is 7. 7 isn't divisible by 3. And it's divisible by 4 because 4 times 4. And I kind of left a big space there, but that's okay, yeah. So 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. The one in the middle, is the numbers are very, very close, so we know that now that we have all of the factors. So let's do 80. This is when it comes in really what I was talking about looking at the numbers far, and then the factors get closer together, and then you know that you have all the factors. That's really helpful for when you're thinking about 80, because 80 is going to have a lot of factors. So the first one is going to be, I'm just going to give a lot of space because I'm not exactly sure how many there are, but I know that 1 times 80, that's 1. 80 is divisible by 2. What is it? 2 and 40. And just notice right there, 1 and 80 are really far apart, and 2 and 40 are still really far apart, but they're a lot closer than 1 and 80. Okay, let's see if the number is divisible by 3. Well, 8 plus 0 is 8. 8 is not divisible by 3, so that number is not divisible by 3. Is it divisible by 4? Yes, 4 times 20. 4 times 20 is 80. And notice those are even closer. Okay, the next one would be 5. And it ends in a 0. And so we know it's divisible by 5 because the number has to end in 0 or 5. And, oh goodness, how many times does 5 go into 80? What is that, 580? I'm just going to do a real quick, because I don't remember it offhand. Don't have that memory. 5 goes into 80 one time. 1 times 5 is 5. We subtract 8 minus 5 is 3. Drop down the 0. And 5 goes into 30 6 times. And 6 times 5 is 30. There's no remainder. So, okay, it goes in 16 times. Sometimes I just have to do the long division. And you can do that as well. It's always good to do things by hand and use your brain. Okay, perfect. The next one would be 6. Is 80 divisible by 6? And we know that for a number to be divisible by 6, it has to be divisible by 2 and also 3. But this is not, 80 is not divisible by 3, so we know it's not divisible by 6. Is it divisible by 7? There's no easy way to find out if a number is divisible by 7. However, I know 7 times 10 is 70, and then times 11 would be 77. And then times 12 would be 7 plus 77, which I know is not 80. So I know it's not divisible by 7. So let's go to 8. Okay, 80, yes, it's divisible by 8. So that would be 8 and 10. 8 times 10 is 80. Okay, the only other number in between those is 9. And I know that 80 is not divisible by 9 because if I add up the digits, 8 plus 0, it's 8. And 8 is not divisible by 9. So that means that it's not divisible by 9. So right now, those are all of the factors of 80. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of factors. But if you look, this is a really cool example because 1 and 80, those are the first factors, and they're really far apart. Then it's 2 and 40, 4 and 20, 5 and 16, they're getting closer and closer together. And then finally 8 and 10, and those are super close. The only other factor there could be between those is 9, and 9 times 9 is 81. It doesn't work. So we know that we have all of the factors listed for 80. So we want to make cancel out all the factors that are common. And what I see that they have a 2 common, there's a 4 common, and there's an 8 common. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to cancel out the biggest one. That's usually what makes things easy. So 16 over 80. And I'm just going to rewrite this, okay? So I'm going to write it as 8 times 2. 16 is the same thing as 8 times 2, right? And then 80 is the same thing as 8 times 10. Oh my goodness, you guys are probably like, oh, Joy, what are you doing? There's a bigger one. And it's 16. Here, that's the bigger one. How did I miss that? You are correct. Well, we will do that. We'll do it this way, and then we'll do it a second way because I totally missed that. But we're going to keep going on with this. So 16 is the same thing as 8 times 2, and 80 is the same thing as 8 times 10. So if I cover this up right here, again, we have 8 divided by 8, which is just the same thing as 1. So we're just going to be going 1 times 2 tenths, right? And so that reduced equals 2 tenths. And we would want these to be relatively prime, but they are not because they both have what do they have? They have a common factor of 2. So I could rewrite this as 2 times 1 and 2 times 5. And again, because 2 times 1 is the same thing as 2, 2 times 5 is the same thing as 10. If I cover up those, we have this 2 divided by 2 again, which is the same thing as 1. Those equal 1. And 1 times 1/5 is just 1/5. Okay? And those two numbers are relatively prime. That is the reduced fraction. Now, if I was doing this isn't, I'm just kind of theoretically showing you what's going on. Now, if I was actually doing my homework, right, and I was doing it like this, and I saw, I'm just going to do it this way. I was like, okay, 8 goes in there. Okay, how many? 8 goes into 16, and it goes into 80. How many times does 8 go into 16? It goes in there 2 times, and then 8 goes in there 10 times. And then I see, oh, man, there's another number that goes in there. Well, that's okay. I know that 2 goes into there. So 2 goes into 2 1 time, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. And now these numbers are relatively prime, so I know my answer is 1/5. Okay, so this is the way that I want you showing it on your homework. Okay? But this is the way I like to talk about it, just so you know what's going on. It's good to think about numbers. Now, let's do it the way that with the biggest number that they have in common. For some reason, I didn't see the 16, so let's just do it again. That's okay. So 16 over 80. Okay, well, they both have a 16 in common. I'm just going to rewrite it. 16 times 1 is the same thing as 16. And 80 is the same thing as 16 times 5. And if I cover up the 1/5, again, look, 16 divided by 16 is the same thing as 1. Okay, so that becomes 1, and your answer is just 1/5. Now, for your homework, this is how I want you to write it. So 16 divided by 80. And 16 goes into 16 1 time, and 16 goes into 80 5 times, so your answer is 1/5. Okay, all right. Let's look at this next example. Ooh, this one has a negative. That's fun. Negative 18 divided by 29. So let's go ahead and think about the factors of 18. So 18, what are the factors? Well, there is a 1 times 18, and then there is, it's even, so that means 2 goes into it. 2 times 9, And 1 plus 8, let's see if 3, it's divisible by 3. 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 is divisible by 3, so that means 18 is divisible by 3. 3 times 6, yeah. And then the next one would be, we would check, would be 4. Yeah, the only numbers left between 3 and 6 are 4 and 5. And I know that it's not divisible by 4, even though it's even. And it's definitely not divisible by 5. So here are all the factors of 18. Even though this is negative, I'm not going to worry about the negative right now. I'm just writing down the factors of 18 and 29. So right now I have all the factors of 18. Let's go ahead and write down the factors of 29, which are going to be 1 and 29. And 29 is not even, so 2 doesn't go into it. 3, 2, let's see if it's divisible by 3. 2 plus 9 is 11. 11 is not divisible by 9, so that's not a factor. And actually, so 3 is not a factor. 4, it can't be divisible by 4 because it would have to be even, and 29 is not even. And then we would get to 5. It does not end in a 0 or a 5, so it's not divisible by 5. And then there would be 6. It's not even. 29 is not even, so it's not divisible by 6. And then there's 7. And I know it's not divisible by 7. There's no easy way for 7, but 7 would be, what would 7 be? 7 times 4 is 28. And things like that. And so 7 times 4, now I'm going backwards into the numbers that I just talked about. So the numbers actually, if we look about this, so 1 times 29, and then we talked about 2. The closest 1 to 2 would be about 2 and 15. Even though that's not 29, 2 times 15 is 30. It would approximately be around that. And then we get to 3, and it would be about 3 times 10. That's 30, right? Which is close to 29. When I did 4, it would be 4 times 7 is about 28. It's still, these are not factors. And then after that, it would be 5 times 6 would be 30. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just establishing, even though these numbers right here are not factors at all, they are really, really close to 29. And if you see what's happening, 1 times 29 is far, 2 times 15 is 30, right? But the numbers are closer. 3 times 10 is 30. And notice that 3 and 10 are closer together. 4 times 7 is 28. And see how 4 and 7, those numbers are getting closer than 1 and 29. 1 and 29 are very spread out. And then we get to 5 and 6, which is 30. And those numbers are really, really close. That means there's no other numbers in between there. So when I go to 6, I'm really going to 5, because 6 times 5 is 30. And then when I go to 7, I'm really going to 7, 4. And so I'm just going backwards. And when you get to the point where you're looking at the factors, and the factors are very, very, they're not spread out at all, what you've known is that you've exhausted all the possibilities for checking to see if there's factors of 29. So at this point, I know that there is no other factors for 29 besides 1 and 29. And if that explanation is a little confusing for you, let's talk. Make sure you ask me about it in our lecture, and we'll go over it, and I'll try to explain it better. But since only 1 and 29 are the factors of 29, what we know is we know that 29 is a prime number. That means only 1 in itself go into it. So when we look at these numbers, okay, yes, what do they have in common? They both have a 1. All right, and do they have any other numbers in common? I don't think so. So these numbers are relatively prime. So that means the answer to this is just is equal to negative 18 over 29. That is the simplified version. So now I'm going to have you work on a few problems yourself, and then we're going to come back and talk about them. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say pause. It's time to pause, and I'm bringing out my little, I found this little dragon on my desk. So I don't know if it was for me or somebody else, or they just left it, but I thought it was really cool, and I thought that it needed to be incorporated into our videos. So here you go. This is our little pause dragon. And so now you know that you need to pause the video and do some work on your own. I want you to check it out, example 1A, and check it out, example 1B, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.